labor agitation on the gold mines. 19,
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the webinar that looks at the Muslim Judicial Council and its workings. And we welcome the presenter that will be here today. That is none other than Sheikh Riyad Fattar. And he has basically a very long CV, but the highlights of the CV, he is currently the president of the Muslim Judicial Council SA, based in Cape Town. He is also the Imam of Masjid Al Khair in Mitchells Plain, and he was also the former deputy president of the Muslim Judicial Council, where he has overseen a number of departments, which include the Social Development Department. And that is the same department where the talaqs and fas are issued, and many of these cases then end up in the South African courts, right? And the Muslim Judicial Council is known for a number of matters in this regard. So we are very, very humble and excited to have Sheikh Riyad Fattar with us here today under the Muslim Personal Law Unit here at the University of the Western Cape Faculty of Law, which is a unit under the CLEAR, which is the Center for Legal Integration in South Africa. So without any further ado, I now hand over to the respected honored President of the Muslim Judicial Council, Sheikh Riyad Fattar. فليتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala to everybody, and to our non-Muslim viewers or listeners, a warm welcome to everybody on board. I want to leave almost like a slogan, and I'm hoping to repeat this every time we go through this. When we speak about Muslim personal law, Muslim marriage bill, and all of these things, the one thing that has always come through, my opinion, obviously, is the political will behind all of this. Because when one looks at all other acts that came into being, while it was said there's opposition and whatever the case may be, there were oppositions also to the other, and it wasn't taken note of. So the Muslim marriage bill or the Muslim personal law is something that the Muslim Judicial Council has been looked at. Let me first say, when we speak about Muslim personal law, we must know that the Muslim Judicial Council, and established on the 10th of February 1945, has way before 94, I've worked with Muslim personal law, having our own Sharia court and dealing with issues of talaq and fasakh and inheritance and all of these kind of things. That has been a process that has been within the Muslim Judicial Councils for many, many, many years. But getting it to government to recognize is really a heartache. I remember that the older people used to say that our former president, Nelson Mandela, would ask Minister Dalla Umar, rahimahullah, I would tell him, I can't believe that Muslim marriages are not recognized. This is the democratic South Africa. And would encourage him to see what to do to get it organized. So if we're going to speak about 94, and you look up till now, wallahi, then it's really a travesty of justice in the recognizing, because Muslims are taught by the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Work together on that which will bring you will bring goodness and bring piety. And when we see that we want to work with our government of the day in South Africa, then you're hoping that they would in turn work with you as well. Over the years already, the Muslim Judicial Council, other NGOs like the Women's Legal Center, IUC, and Al Jamaa Party, and so on, we have seen how everybody has tried, and government will never be able to step back and say, your people have not tried. But it appears as if whatever the Muslim community has put forward, whatever the legal side of the Muslim Judicial Council, we have a legal desk that deals with this. Dr. Munir Abdul Rauf is the head of that. We have Ismail Muhammad that's on there, and the other legal experts that are all on there that also helps with this. And we see over the years, when a Muslim dies, you have this painful thing on the death certificate. And by the way, I'm also oversee the burial for the Muslim Judicial Council. You see this thing saying never married. So what does never married mean? Also that your children is illegitimate. And we've seen attempts that has been made to the Home Affairs Minister, Machaladi, to remove this insulting term of never married. And unfortunately, it didn't go down well, and it never happened. So the Muslim Judicial Council has been pushing the buttons everywhere. You must remember that this is not something that happened overnight. And when you look at people that has been the chairman of the Law Commission, like Judge Ismail Muhammad, and some of the commission's leaders at the time, Jeremy Gauntlet and others, all looked at this. So in other words, it's not something new. It's not something that we lost touch of and then nothing happened. It never happened like that. All that we wanted to see was that Muslim marriages given the same recognition as other people get married in South Africa. Now, we have a clause in our constitution, and by the way, as far as that clause is concerned, it means that our government is not operating constitutionally, because that clause says that we would be, or expressed in the following way, that we are united in diversity. And the Muslims are still waiting to be recognized in that diversity. So there's no real united there that is happening there. But we see from Judge Ismail Muhammad and everybody, all the researches that's been done and so on, to give this kind of recognition. Disputes at that time, they said, look, this must go to a bench of qadis, meaning Muslim judges, meaning Muslim judges by Sharia, that is qualified in terms of Sharia. And Judge Muhammad has clearly said judges outside the Muslim faith should not interfere in Muslim matters. So meetings with the Minister of Justice at the time, the late Dala Umar, rahimahullah, and delegations from the Justice Department has been ongoing from the Muslim community side. We know that there were different camps within the Muslim community, but that should not have stalled government. We've seen that government, there was no will. When you see the will of politicians in terms of this, is when it comes to election time, and this carrot is waved in front of the Muslim community on what can we do about the Muslim marriage bill or Muslim Marriage Act to become a Muslim Marriage Act or Muslim personal law and all of these things. And this was, it was an opportunity that we every time took, hoping that we're going to get somewhere. According to some researchers, it is a fact that the majority of Muslim community in South Africa preferred the Muslim Marriage Act or a Muslim Marriage Act to come into play in order to take this, to get the Muslim marriages legal. There was also a protest to the then President Zuma, but again, with the objections that is there, probably the right word to use in Cape Town is he got bang. He got scared and didn't take the thing further or anything like that. The government then came up what was called, and we were called into a meeting by Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Fatima Chauhan, and she presented what was called the Omnibus Marriage Bill, something like that. Even up till today, the United Ulama Council of South Africa, and obviously the MJC is in UXA, United Ulama Council, is now in favor of that omnibus, and she recommended that time. But what we want to see in terms of that, and what we've been playing along with that, or going along with it, was that there should be a chapter that deals specifically with Muslims. There's a chapter that deals with Hindus. There's a chapter that deals with Christians, and whatever other marriages there are, that it will, that chapter deals with that only. One of the other things that has also happened before I come to 2014 on the appointment of Muslim marriage officers, because that really happened in that meeting with our Honorable Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Fatima Chauhan, is another thing that was also tried, and I think they can speak for themselves, was also a private member's bill by Al Jama'ah party and so on, and things happen there that they will have to explain themselves. So we went to a point with different people giving input, even Sheikh Tawfar that has also given input there, and saying that, okay, in the case of a divorce, then the husband is responsible for nafaqah for 3 months. And if he delays on that or he doesn't fulfill, then that would be considered contempt of court and so on. So many things happen. There was a judgment that we welcomed, and that I noticed in the archives that I had commented on, and I'm thinking this was around about the 24th of August, 2018. Our very honorable judge, Siraj Desai, on a Friday morning, he declared that the president of the country and other respondents have failed in their constitutional obligation to have legislation enacted that governs Muslim marriages and its consequences within the South African context. The Muslim Judicial Council were definitely very close. We must remember that when we look at the Holy Quran and we look at Muslim marriages and who are the people that advise us, then you will see that the Muslim Judicial Council has always gone with the ayah, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرٍ كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people that know, and if you don't know. So Judge Siraj Desai and all the other judges, and today we have Dr. Munir and the other legal people that are all guiding us on this. So that at that time, 2018, was a milestone for the Muslim community. We thank the judge for that. In actual fact, that judgment also went to the SCA, the Supreme Court of Appeal, and I think it was last year, that gave a similar ruling in terms of Muslim marriages as that of Judge Siraj Desai. A little bit of changes here and there and so on, but basically it meant the same thing. So this was significant for us. Alhamdulillah, we saw the Women's Legal Center, coming up with a court case at the Constitutional Court, the judgment handed down, and I think it was in June 22, and so on, which inter alia declared the Marriage Act 25 of 1961 and the Divorce Act 70 of 1979 to be inconsistent with the South African Constitution. And you know, it's so funny, sometimes when we're in organizations, everybody is talking about, no, you can't do that, it's unconstitutional, you can't do that, that wasn't, or you did that, it wasn't in line with the Constitution. And we see that Muslims are being failed in terms of our South African Constitution for so many years. Muslims are being failed. And so many legal people have come on board, giving government direction, helping along so that they can come to a point where they recognize the Muslim marriages and so on. So that was a great help. But coming back to 2014, so we agreed then from the MJC side to the institution of Muslim marriage officers. And we were we were assured that that is on the road to the recognition of Muslim personal law. And what did that? We had a Muslim Judicial Council. In actual fact, was the leading role, played the leading role in that. What did that mean? It means that Muslim marriage officers were now established within the Home Affairs. The Honorable Dr. Naledi Pandor is the one that now appointed us as Muslim marriage officers. People would now marry, and this is the agreement that the MJC had made with Home Affairs, and the other ulama bodies fell in line with the same agreement, is that a nikah would first take place. And we would only marry South Africans. And after the nikah, we would encourage people that they would do an ANC without accrual, antenuptial contact without accrual. And we even called a meeting with different notaries and asked them to reduce their fees, and which they did, mashallah. You can see everybody's trying to put in something to see how they can help. And yeah, so the Muslim marriage officer would then do a civil marriage in line with the Marriage Act of 1961, but with this contact that is called the antenuptial contact without accrual. That went on for a while, and we encourage people not to go with COP. Majority of ulama feel COP, community of property, does not conform to our Sharia. We also told Home Affairs, please stay away from marrying Muslim couples, refer them to the MJC. We will refer them to the relevant Muslim marriage officer that would be there. And alhamdulillah, we had that going. We had notaries that helped at the time, and they also, all of this to try and help in the way forward. Then came 2022, and we saw the Constitutional Court hearing, and alhamdulillah, it looked like we're on our way. The government got 24 months, then got an extension. And in that time, the MJC legal desk, together with, I would say, the UXA legal desk, because basically the same people, Dr. Munir, Ismail Muhammad, and others, we sat so many times with Home Affairs. You can see all the different law commissions that came up, but we sat so many times with Home Affairs, and every time they come back and say, right, look, we're ready for you, and this is what we've got, and they never got it right, to the point that they even moved to register Muslim marriages under the Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, the word now slipped me. I'll get to that. to register Muslim marriages under the Customary Marriage Act. And that didn't work for us also, because the one thing that our legal people, and you must admire them because they are not paid for this, they are doing this out of their own time, spending their time writing up reports, going through whatever has been put forward by Home Affairs, and seeing how they every time got wrong. The one thing that was important in that Constitutional Court judgment that was brought about by the Women's Legal Center was, you must recognize it in terms of Sharia law. In terms of Sharia law. And that they missed the ball. And every time we had to send them packing and say, this is not the way that it is, and whatever the case may be, because it's not in line with Sharia. And this is how we continued with what we had in front of us. And every time we get an opportunity, we make use, sure we go in there and see what is it that we can do in terms of furthering this thing. We have never left them off. We have always made sure that they are going to be tested by the Muslim community, by the MJC, by our legal people of the MJC, and see how we can push forward so that Muslim marriages can be recognized. But remember, the key here is that it must be by Sharia law. Then only it will be recognized. Now you see what has happened now recently. Remember the omnibus thing, we said it's okay. What is important is the consequences of marriage. And I remember Dr. Munir always pushing them about the consequences of marriage. When we look at the recent signing of the Divorce Amendment Act, one feels that the South African government has now forced something onto the Muslim community. And you know why they get it wrong? Because in their different communities, they do not have ulama that understand Sharia that could guide them in terms of that. They every time think that they have the thing and it is now right and they're now ready and so on. So this new Divorce Amendment Act of 2024, we feel it's being forced onto our community because we do have a tremendous amount of people that feels that they want to do things in terms of the Sharia. That is where, when it comes to this Divorce Amendment Act, it does not go in line with us. This is not a talaq according to Sharia. The consequences of the Divorce Act is something totally different. When it comes to the minors and dependent children, we can agree, yeah, Sharia covers that long time. And when it comes to other things that the Act deals with, our Sharia has covered that long before these things are now realized by the people that we live with today. So from an MGC side, we will continue to push for this. We are pushing higher buttons every time. And inshallah ta'ala, we hope that we will see this thing happening still in our time, inshallah ta'ala. Professor Munir, I'm going to stop there. If there's any questions and Q&A time, then I'm ready, inshallah ta'ala.
Thank you, Sheikh Riyad Fattar, acting as the president of the Muslim Judicial Council of South Africa. Thank you very much for sharing your insight and your time with us in the furtherance of the Muslim marriages and where Muslims are at this moment in time. I think I would like to perhaps open the floor for a Q&A session of about maybe 5 to 10 minutes, just to get some input from our listeners. So if anybody has a question, you can put up your hand or in the box, pose your question to the president of the Muslim Judicial Council. So I will open the floor for everybody now. You may proceed. We will check the chat. Okay, we've got nothing in the chat at this moment in time. So again, if you want to ask a question, please feel free to put up your hand, or you can type your question in the box and we will then relay the question to the president of the
I
Muslim
also have the
Judicial
chat open, so I can also see the questions that
Great
come
stuff.
through.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Ashraf. I think Ms. Munira Osman has her hand up. If she can just unmute
Right.
herself, I think she can, inshallah, take the floor.
Okay, Munira Osman, you have the floor. You may go ahead.
Shukran. Thanks to UWC for arranging this very, very critical discussion, I think. And I'm very glad that I've attended. I just wanted to clarify one point that Sheikh Riyad mentioned. And it's my understanding as well, but somehow it has been presented a bit off, if I might use that word, in the press and in media, etc. But it's around this whole new registration process. So my understanding is that it's not new necessarily, in the sense that couples who have always entered into a nikah contract have always had the opportunity to go ahead and register a marriage in terms of the Civil Marriage Act. But what I'm understanding is that efforts are being made to try and ease that process of registration, and more to motivate couples who are married in nikah only to actually go and register their marriage in order to access the various benefits of the law when your marriage is registered. However, the comments I'm sort of referring to is where I've seen statements being made in media, etc., that Muslim marriages are now recognized and you can just go and your nikah certificate will now become a Muslim marriage. And I really would love clarity on that issue, because I'm not sure if my understanding is the correct understanding on that point. Shukran.
Thank you, Munira Osman. I will then ask Honorable President to answer that question and give some input. Sheikh.
Yeah. I agree with Sister Munira. There is a lot of confusion that has been created by certain statements that has been made, and the Muslim Judicial Council has not gone with that. Coming to the registration of the marriages, like you said, yes, it was available before, and but our community was not guided in terms of that. They would marry a COP in community of property, and that was not in line with Sharia, with majority of ulama. So now with the bringing in the Muslim marriage officers, would now be the imam that does that registration, but with the advice of drawing up a contract with the notary that the marriage is now concluded, antenuptial contract without accrual, and that way the parties would now register their marriage. So yes, in terms of whether it is now legal and so on, what I've understood in the last information that has come through is in terms of the omnibus thing, that yes, people can go register, but we're not happy with that part in the absence of, like I said, Professor Munir always saying, how are we going to deal with the consequences of marriage? And there is where we are stuck.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Fattar. We do have a question from Professor Najma Musa. If you can just introduce yourself and ask the question.
Thank you very much. I've got a two-pronged question. The first is, I would like to know whether there have been any Muslim marriages registered under the African Recognition of Customary Marriages Act. If to your knowledge, there have been any such marriages. And then the second part of my question is, sorry, there's just noise outside my place here. The second part of my question is, in terms of the new Divorce Amendment Act of 2024, whether in the past the courts had a discretion in terms of Section 5A of the Divorce Amendment Act, that they could stop a civil marriage if a nikah marriage hasn't been dissolved yet. But now, in terms of this new amendment, it seems that the courts can also dissolve a nikah marriage. What do you make of that? That is what I want to ask. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Again, the same thing like, and that is why I mentioned Judge Ismail Mohammed, is the problem that non-Muslim judges not familiar with the Sharia is not going to do this via Sharia. And this is why we say that that important thing of the Women's Legal Center's constitutional judgment, that is missing, is that it is not according to Sharia. But I could also call on Professor Munir if he wishes to respond as well in terms of that.
Yes, shukran for that, Sheikh Riyad. Yeah, I think I've also spoken to Prof. Musa concerning that matter. And I think, yeah, obviously concerning Section 5, subsection A, where we have the civil marriage as well as the Islamic marriage, then that section would find application as to whether or not Section 5A now applies if it's only Islamic marriage. I have seen instances only where there were Islamic marriages and they went to use the Constitutional Court decision to confirm the dissolution of the marriage that took place maybe at the Muslim Judicial Council and so forth. And when the amendment was made to the Divorce Act, I believe they're following the same suit in that regard. So I'm also in the dark as to what the actual position should be. I hope that answers basically that question of Musa.
Thank you, Prof. Musa. We do have a question from Sister Fatima Esop. You may proceed.
Assalamu alaikum. Shukran again to UWC
Salam.
for organizing this. Sheikh, I just wanted to know, you mentioned that if people conclude their ANC, it has to be out of community without accrual. I just want to know what the position is and why you'd say it shouldn't be with accrual, why the marriage can't be out of community with accrual. I understand the reservation about in community of property because one spouse can't be liable for the death of another. But what's the objection to parties marrying out of community with accrual? That's the one question. And the second question is, the way I understand the Divorce Amendment Act of 2024 to be is that if you can prove that you have an Islamic marriage certificate, you can actually go to the courts now and institute a divorce proceedings in terms of the Divorce Amendment Act of 2024, of course, and that would be automatically out of community of property, and the court has a discretion to redistribute the assets on divorce. I mean, that's my understanding in response to Munira's question. And maybe Sheikh Abdurrauf can just clarify.
Yeah. Fatima, Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh, Fatima. Fatima, in terms of having it ANC and without accrual, was what the ulama has come up that is closest in terms of Sharia. In trying to see how to make this thing work, they felt that that was closest, that whatever the wife gains in terms of the marriage remains with her, the same with the husband, unless, of course, they have an outside agreement on what they would share. But that is what the ulama felt would be closest to accept that. Professor Munir, if you perhaps want to respond to the other part for her.
Yes, we'll give Sheikh Munir an opportunity to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Sheikh Shukran, for that, Sheikh Fatah. Yes, concerning the matter of the Imam marriage officers, I believe Sheikh Riyad was quite the person that was instrumental in that when the Fatwa department actually issued or gave the directive. I believe that time already, Maulana Tawakaran stated that when these marriage officers do conclude these marriages, there has to be that anti-nuptial contact as to out of community property without the application of the accrual system. So that was a position at least taken by the Muslim Judicial Council. That did not, however, prevent any parties that wanted to make use of any other system from going to any other marriage officer. But the Muslim Judicial Council's marriage officers, however, were bound by the stipulations put down by the MJC and the advice given by the Fatwa department. Yeah, so this is some extra clarification as what Sheikh Riyad has already stated.
Thank you, Sheikh Munir Abdul Rauf. If we have any further questions, the floor is open.
Yes, Dr. Ashraf, can I take the floor?
You may proceed and just state your name.
Shukran so much, Dr. Ashraf, for giving me the floor, and to Sheikh Riyad for that very enlightening lecture. I think my question revolves around something that Sheikh did touch on earlier, and I think many individuals in this room also do understand that the consequences that ensue from the recognition, although the recognition is good for us, I mean, it is something that we needed many, many decades ago, but the consequences is where we find the problem area. And I'm actually writing my LLD PhD thesis on this very topic. So I think, inshallah, in time to come, I would love to have a sit down with Sheikh Riyad in your capacity as president of the MJC to find out in depth this question. But in simple, my question is two-pronged. Firstly, what would be the best solution, being that we have our own separate legislation? Should we take it further to ask for a separate court structure? And the second question would be, based on that answer, would this be possible in a South African context?
Okay. First of all, the consequences, I take you back to what the court judgment was, and we are harping on that. And like I said, our legal people, of which Dr. Munir is the head, feels that Sharia, according to Sharia, and remember I mentioned with the omnibus marriage, that there must be a chapter that deals with Muslims only. And in that way, we can work with whatever act comes up, as long as Sharia is going to be recognized in terms of that. In the absence of Sharia, then what do we say as Muslims on how we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in terms of Allah ta'ala being the ultimate lawmaker? So that is where we get stuck with government and with Home Affairs especially. And in the last very high-profile meeting that we had, when it comes to elections, you get very high-profile meetings that take place. And in the last high-profile meeting that we had, it was acknowledged by senior politicians that the link that is missing are people like Dr. Munir and the rest of the ulama that have both kind of education from a Sharia perspective as well as a legal perspective. That component is missing. Did I cover your second question, Muhammad Hussein? I'm not sure.
Yes, Sheikh, shukran so much for your input on that. So building on from that, Sheikh, if I may just ask a follow-up question, with that link being missing, obviously, I think Professor Munir, Professor Najma, and many others, yourself included also, would be the best key to sort of fill this link. So is Sheikh actually advocating for a separate court structure in our country?
Look, these are all negotiations that take place. If the parliament passes a bill that would allow for a separate chapter in terms of Muslims, and we can have our own people that sit in that court to deal with that, then that will be like number one, right? If there is going to be needed that people like Dr. Munir, and there's many research papers that has already been given in, that it can work, giving the judges, look, they work according to sets of rules and laws that's in front of them, and telling them this is the law or whatever the case may be, then yes, inshallah ta'ala, it can work. Other than that, it's going to be tough to have a non-Muslim judge sitting there and trying to figure out. So the best scenario is always to have Muslim people that are qualified to sit in that position. And by the way, you asked, can it work or something like that, or do we have the people? That's how I understood it. We have many of them. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you, Sheikh. The floor is open. I think we can take one more question. If anybody would like to pose
There's
a
one
question.
written in the messages.
Yes. Yes. Okay, the
There's
question is,
in the
there we go.
oh.
Salam Sheikh, this is Latifa. I'm also part of the private law department at UWC. So I teach family law, and so I just have a few questions. It's out of interest. The first is with regard to the imams that were appointed as marriage officers. So I understand that one of the perks of that was that they could then assist with the antenuptial contract.
No.
With the ANC. That was one of.
Let me allow me to take. You said you got many questions, so let me take them one by one. Otherwise, I'm going to forget all the questions. The ANC, without accrual, we refer them to notaries.
Okay.
So they don't get involved there.
Okay, but my understanding was, with the Marriage Act was that you can do your religious marriage, and then if you want to, you can then go to Home Affairs. So I understood that.
Correct.
Appointing imams as marriage officers is, instead of going to, you can do your nikah and then your civil marriage basically at the same time, as opposed this weekend I'm doing it now. And I just wanted to know if my understanding of that was correct, and then the guidance as far as, the actual separation of property without of community, without the crew being as close to the Islamic concept. So I just wanted to know if that was correct. And then,
yes,
as far as child marriage is concerned, because I know there's a move away from the recognition of child marriages, which currently civil law does recognize, but I sat in a workshop with the South African Law Reform Commission where they were talking about the bills, and one of the things that they made clear is that they're definitely going to push towards a move away from child marriage, and what the NJC's views on that is. And then lastly, with the consequences of the Divorce Act applying and the redistribution of assets there, is there a feeling that that also conflicts with Sharia law? Because, you're basically asking for assets from the one spouse being transferred to the other, because that's now a possibility with the Divorce Act applying, that the redistribution of assets orders are concerned. So if we say no to redistribution of assets orders and your maintenance is limited to, for example, once your IDA period is done, I think the concern is that a lot of women are still left destitute. What would the solution then be? Because that's one of the advantages of the Divorce Act applying. These are just questions that I have. I hope they weren't too much.
Yeah,
Shukran.
Latifa, I'm with you, and I want to assure you that Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, the Sharia covers all of those bases already. In terms of what belongs to a woman belongs to her. If there is agreement, let's assume she is the more wealthier one in a relationship, and she buys things, Sharia recognizes that it is her property, it is what she leaves as inheritance, and so on. So that is definitely there, yes. As far as redistribution, I don't know. In the context where we have normal marriage. By the way, just to touch on that first point again, and I just remember that now, we have an agreement with Home Affairs and with all the Muslim marriage officers that no civil marriage will take place until the nikah has been done already. And I want to emphasize that because it appears as though there are certain people that is doing the marriage, the civil marriage at Home Affairs, while the other has not yet been completed, while the nikah has not been yet completed. So in terms of our Sharia, there's no nikah. So that is a very dangerous thing to go on. Coming back to the redistribution, Alhamdulillah, our deen covers a woman in terms of what belongs to her, cannot go to the husband, and things like that. And what we've seen lately in terms of our local marriages and things that are happening within our community, and this is why we are so on this track, is that we do find situations where we get married, the husband buys the house, the husband buys the car, and the wife is paying towards the clothing and towards the upkeep of the house and things like that. And when it comes to divorce or death, there's no more clothing and there's no more that around. There's only this house and car around. So we do feel that the woman must be protected in that, because she had spent the same amount of energies and attention to the marriage like the husband. So yeah, that is something that we, and that is why we encourage the ANC without accrual, so that she can be part. And whatever agreements is then is made between them is agreement. The Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam clearly says, al-Muslimun ala wa'udihim, that the Muslim Ummah will be held responsible for the agreements that you have made or the contracts that you have signed.
Thank you, Sheikh. We have a question in the box there from, I think it's Sister Konita Basir. And the question is basically, how can we encourage a similar parallel legal system like in the UK?
Yeah, we've had some people from the UK that has come here to find out what we are doing and so on. We've given them the advice. They have their own ideas of how to get past it. And maybe if Sister Pranita can contact me, I'm not sure if she's in the UK, then we can forward the numbers of those people who are busy with it at the moment. But yes, anybody is welcome to come and sit with the MJC and our legal people, and we can speak about how we can do that, inshallah ta'ala.
Shukran, Sheikh. Thank you, Sheikh. Just one very last question before we conclude this webinar. Anybody with a hand or a question? I think there's something in the chat box. We'll check that again. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, Sister Fatima Esaf, you may proceed.
I have multiple questions, but I'll also restrict them.
If we can just keep them.
I just wanted to know by Sheikh Fattar that you have refer your marriage officer, imams, refer people to notaries. I'd like to know if there's a list publicly available of those notaries. And then secondly, this thing about my understanding is that you actually have to conclude your ANC with your lawyer and your notary before entering your religious marriage. So I'm not sure why there's this concern raised about parties concluding the ANC before the nikah. In fact, my son got married recently, and that's exactly what he did. He finalized the ANC because you have a set amount of time to do that after your religious marriage. And then there was the last question about the
Fatima, so what is the question there?
The first one was the notaries, list of notaries. The second one was why the concern about people shouldn't be doing their, I'm assuming the anti-nuptial contracts before their nikah.
Oh, okay,
And then the third one was related to what Latifa just raised about the fact that women, in fact, it's all good and well to say what's yours is yours and mine is mine. That's what the Islamic law says. But like Sheikh, you correctly pointed out, women inevitably contribute non-financial contributions to the marriage. And my understanding is that in terms of the Divorce Amendment Act, the court can now order redistribution of the assets on divorce, which benefits women because the courts will take into account all those caregiving, housekeeping responsibilities that she contributed to the marriage, and will then redistribute the assets according to that each party's contribution. So I thought that was a good thing, and it sounds like you think it too by what you were saying about taking the woman's contribution into account. I'm just trying to find out if that is what you were saying.
No, that is true. It doesn't mean everything in the new act that we oppose, but you see, as soon as you completely discard Sharia from a Muslim's life, and we know that Sharia is in the life of a Muslim from birth to death, then you stand the dangers of moving things in terms of government hands to decide, or the judge that is there to decide. But to come back to your first question, yes, we do have a list of notaries. In actual fact, we have a Muslim marriage officer chat on the MJC side, where every time people are asked to do that. We haven't had contact with these notaries again since I think we called them in 2015 or 2016. And from there on, it just carried on, and some of them are still in and some of them are not. But yeah, so there is names in terms of that. As far as that anti-nuptial contract without the accrual, where it's done before the nikah or after the nikah is not the important part there. It is doing the civil marriage prior to nikah that we do not agree with. Because if a couple is married, they're married by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of a nikah.
Shukran, Sheikh. We just have, this will be our final question, or maybe just a comment by Muhammad Peterson. If you are online, would you like to just pose that comment? You have the floor.
Oh, okay. No, I was just commenting in the chat that I said that, and I think this can probably also be a response to that, the question pertaining to a woman who or with regards to the distribution of assets. I just said that in Islam, to my understanding, a woman should always, a woman should always have a male relative who's taking care of her. So if she's married, it would be this is financially now. So if she's married, it would be the husband, and once she's divorced, then it will be a male relative, no matter how far you have to go to get it, whether it's the father, the brother, the son, an uncle, grandfather, and if there is no such male whatsoever, then there are also institutions, zakah institutions, I believe, such as Sanzaf, different institutions to which a woman can approach. I don't know, but Sheikh knows better.
Yeah, Muhammad, let me just answer you on that, Muhammad. Yes, that is in Islam, and that is the ideal situation. Seeing what happens through our social development department, unfortunately, our women are not being taken care of. Women are left there to find themselves, and whatever the case may be. And sometimes it's unbelievable that you think that there are no male relatives around to help. When you speak about Sanzaf and so on, yeah, okay, alhamdulillah, they are there to help, but she shouldn't be in that position. If there are things that the marriage had accumulated in terms of a house or a car or whatever, then she should have a right to that. Because as husbands, we all know that we are able to amass whatever wealth because of our wives being there to help us, you know?
Thank you, Sheikh. This was going to be our very last question. Brother Faisal Bulbulia has had his hand up for a long time. Brother Faisal Bulbulia, you may proceed with this very last question.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm an attorney in Notary Public, so I can inform some of the questions. Just the one question about a nikah, you know, anti-nuptial contract before the nikah. Look, an anti-nuptial contract, a nikah marriage is not recognized as yet. So the anti-nuptial contract has to be signed before they actually get married civilly. That's mean after the nikah, they go get married. I think what's also confusing about registration is that the Home Affairs has made a directive and with regard to Muslim marriages. And they got a directive that people with a nikah certificate can approach the Department of Home Affairs and they can register their marriage, Muslim marriage, in terms of the customary Marriage Act. And they're issuing marriage certificates in terms of the customary Marriage Act. So you're getting a registered marriage. Now, in that sense, if they go get registered, if the couples, Muslim couples approach the Department of Home Affairs, they will be issued with sort of a marriage certificate. And in that instance, they will have to enter into a contract before they go register the marriage with the Home Affairs. I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, Faisal, I just want to give a comment here on that. From a Sharia point of view, we've never agreed with the, what did you call it now? Allahumma salli, the act that they marry under?
The directive of
the Customary Marriage
recognition,
Act. We've never agreed with that. It doesn't conform to Sharia. So therefore, we never agreed with that. As far as that marriage that Home Affairs has put out, that you can come and register your marriage and so on, we've also raised concerns about that because they don't tell people that you are actually getting married under the Customary Marriage Act. And there were other organizations, and I don't want to mention on this platform, there were other organizations that also call people to go and register, but not telling them that you are actually registering under the Customary Marriage Act. And that does not go with Sharia. The court has been very clear on this, and our legal teams have been very clear, and that is it must be according to Sharia. That is what Home Affairs must recognize, and whatever justice people there are in our Justice Department, that is what they must recognize.
Sheikh, thank you very much. That's the very last of all the Q&A. On behalf of UWC, the Law Faculty, CLEAR, and the Muslim Personal Law Unit consisting of Professors Najma Musa, Munir Abdurauf, Dr. Latif Hamani, Ashraf Bowley, and LLD candidate Mohammed Hussein Sange, we would like to say thank you very much for this valuable insight of where we find ourselves as Muslims and the healthy debate that emanates from this, I think, has given us food for thought and some clarity, I hope, on the way forward. So again, thank you very much for taking the time. Sheikh Riyad Fattar, President of the MJC. Thank you, everybody.
Jazakallah khair, Habibi. Much appreciated. I want to leave everybody with this thought. Like I said, I'm going to be persistent, so I am. And that is there's no political will to help us through this.
Thank you, Sheikh Fattar, for those words. And thank you to everybody, and the debate that was very healthy. Thank you all, and I wish you all a good day. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.